Good afternoon. I'm with Hercules Metals CEO Chris Paul on the day that Hercules has delivered the best drill intercept in the history of the Leviathan Porphyry copper project. Hey, Chris, how are you?
I'm doing well. Good afternoon, Robert.
420 meters, a 0.60% copper with some silver and moly on top. I calculated 0.69, 0.70% copper equivalent. So this tops hole 2420. It tops hole 2305 in my book because it's such a wider interval. What's your takeaway?
Yeah, well, I guess that 6 grams of silver goes a long way at, what are we at, $90 silver today? Yeah, so what, by the way, I mean, I didn't actually calculate the copper equivalent. Was that based on current silver prices?
That calculation is based upon the exact same formula that you use for hole 2420. So it's not based upon.
Gotcha.
It's based upon $3 copper and I think $30 silver.
Yeah. Well, which is fair, right? Like,
yeah.
It's not like silver has been $90 for a very long time here, but yeah. Look, there's a lot of copper on that section. I think we showed figure 4 of the news release, so you can see. I mean, that cross section is about 750 meters wide, right? So that's width. And you've got 2503, 2505, 2515, 2305, right? So the original discovery hole is on that section, and all of it is fairly good grade. I mean, with the exception of maybe 2503, which came back, I think, closer to 0.4, right? Because it was on the outside. So as you kind of get towards the middle, it's closer to 0.6 over very long intervals. And then as you get towards the outside, it's closer to 0.4. And then, of course, you've got the silver lead zinc sitting on top of that. So look, I'll be honest, like we're taking a very serious look now. Like we've talked with a certain strategic, and we're taking a very serious look now at the open pitability of this thing. And obviously everyone, had their 2 cents at the beginning. Oh, it's deep. Oh, it's got so much cover. It's never going to work. Blah, blah, blah. Well, guess what? It's $6 copper and whatever the silver price is now. I honestly believe that there's, a very decent chance that, you run an open pit optimization study on something like this, and you're stripping, all you're doing is you're just stripping away the cover, which has quite a bit of silver in it, and you're either breaking even, which is certainly not a bad situation to have if you're exposing this copper deposit for an open pit. 0.6 is going to be wildly economic, for an open pit, but you're probably going to be making money on stripping that cover, to be honest, if silver prices stay where they're at. So yeah, it's positive. We've got about 1 kilometer of strike length to find now, and it's still open to the south.
Yeah, I think that's a great point because after hole 2305 and the Barrick investment and all the hoopla over this is a new porphyry copper discovery, it's a new porphyry belt in the US, right? Copper, copper, copper. We all forgot what made this place in the first place, right? It was the silver. And in fact, that's why you took a look at this in the first place, was because of the silver. That was the name of the company. And the silver hasn't gone anywhere, right? The silver has not gone anywhere. In fact, it looks like it's growing larger based upon some of the results you had recently, including that hole 2506 down at Southern Flat. So I think the copper should not be forgotten about, and I'm sure there are some people out there that are looking very closely at the silver on top of the copper and the economic viability of it, right? And yeah, I mean, I think we can all use Chat GPT or do our own back of the napkin math. I know I have, and yeah, I think the silver pays for the stripping costs and then some. Obviously, it's totally different math at $75 silver versus $25 silver, but I mean, even at, let's, meet in the middle, let's say 50, it looks pretty good to me. But obviously, let's have a certified firm, validate that. And it sounds like at the end of the news release, that's something that you might be doing in 2026. So let's talk about the holes in this, news release. So 2515, 2517, 2519, 2515 best ever, really showing the thickness and the grade in the footwall. But what's going on in hole 2517, Chris? Some of the grades and the hypogene enrichment towards the top of the hole, we've never seen anything like that.
Yeah. Well, let me just first, I just want to say one more thing about the silver before we talk about 17, and that's that, yeah, we came in here originally because there was 308 historical holes drilled, average depth of about 90 meters over a period of 20 years. So there's a lot of historical drilling here. Now I think silver was $20 or $25 when we bought this project, and so the only thing that was really of any significance to us at the time was this zone we called, Hercules and Frog Pond, which combined, back in the 80s, they'd done this sort of feasibility study on. Now I can't, I'm not going to talk too much about the numbers of that because none of it's 43101 compliant, right? But you can, go online and the Idaho mining, Idaho Geological Survey website, and you can download a lot of these old reports, and you can, pull up this report, and it'll say there's roughly, a lot of these reports kind of mention this 24 million ounces of silver at about 120 grams per ton, silver plus about 1.5% lead zinc. Now, obviously, that would be considered a pretty small deposit, right, for silver by today's standards. And so the initial goal was that, hey, let's see if we can grow this thing closer to maybe we can find 100 million ounce silver deposit. What's interesting is if you just take the price of silver when we bought it, let's say it was $25 an ounce when we bought this thing. And by the way, we bought this project 100% outright for 350,000 Canadian. We bought the whole thing, right? Okay, so if you quadruple the price of silver, you effectively quadruple the value per ton of that rock, right? So it's effectively the same as, if we want to go from, let's say, this theoretical historical resource that was around 24 million ounces of silver, and we wanted to go to 100, we want to quadruple the size, and effectively quadruple the amount of value. Well, quadrupling the silver price effectively does the same thing without even having to do anything. So that's interesting. But more importantly, we always ignored, the hundreds of other holes that were drilled outside of Hercules and Frog Pond, because, they're 20 grams silver, 30 grams, 20 to 30 grams silver, which just, at $20, $25 an ounce doesn't really excite anyone. But again, you quadruple the value of that rock, and all of a sudden, you're looking at, 80 to maybe 120 grams equivalent of what, that would have been when we first bought it. So yeah, I just wanted to sort of get that out there, and that's why we're now doing that, what we mentioned, that order of magnitude study, which essentially they're going to look at it and say, and what that is basically it's an internal resource estimate. We're going to do it ourselves first. We're not going to publish it. It's not going to be 43101 compliant. We're just going to do it ourselves, quick and dirty, back of the napkin. And then we can see, oh, wait, we probably want to fill this gap here. We can't include this because the spacing is too wide, but if you put another hole in here, then we can include all that. And so it sort of gives us a sort of, idea of what's left to do. How many holes are left to drill here in early 2026 before we do the official 43101 compliant MRE. So with that out of the way, let's answer your actual question on 2517. So yeah, look, obviously we've got this hypogene enrichment mineralization, which is focused at the top of the porphyry system. And this is where the porphyry system overlapped with an overlying epithermal system, and where the two systems overlapped, you got this really, really, really high grade material. Now, once you drill through that, typically with a lot of our holes, the grade would stay sort of constant, or if anything started dropping. So what's interesting is I think we first noticed this with a few holes before, like 2308 and 2412, is you go through that, but then all of a sudden the grade would sort of spike up again at the end of the hole. Well, we got that again here with hole 17, right? So you go through, and then all of a sudden there's a massive spike back up in grade, which carries through to the end of the hole. And by the way, why did we end a hole in 0.62 copper? That was a pre-collar hole, and our core drillers, Dorado, who the best core drillers we've ever had on this project, and we love Dorado, unfortunately got screwed because the casing that was set by the pre-collar company, I'm not going to name names, was not set well. Right, so they drill the first 1,000 feet. They put this casing in the hole, and then as the core drill goes down, the rods vibrate. Right, as you're drilling, it's going down really fast, and they're vibrating. And if that casing isn't set properly, it comes loose and it starts to slide. And anyways, that casing came loose, and we got to about whatever it was, 900 meters, and Dorado said, "Look, guys, we cannot push this any further." And so that's why that hole ended. I mean, we were bummed. I mean, we had the XRF gun, coming back to 0.6. Like, you never end a hole in 0.6. But anyways, we get the results back. We get the results back of this new phase 2 MT survey at the same time. And we see, lo and behold, wow, that hole, that 25 centimeters, right where the grade spikes up again, is actually getting into the top of this new conductivity anomaly. So I don't know what that means, but it certainly looks like there's potentially another early porphyry center that's kind of deeper down, just like you get at Red Chris, right? So with Red Chris, I think Imperial had drilled it for years and years and years to find this open pit that was relatively low grade. And then who was it that came in? I can't remember. Maybe it was Imperial that came in. Yeah, I think it was. Sorry, it was a Red Chris company before. Then Imperial came in. They drilled that first deep hole, that famous deep hole at Red Chris, and found that they drilled through all that, and then all of a sudden at really deep levels, the grade spikes up again, and there's this other sort of early mineral porphyry center that's deeper down, and that's what ultimately became the big block cave high grade resource at Red Chris. And so maybe that's what this MT anomaly, this new MT anomaly, is showing us. But yeah, we're obviously going to be putting some serious drilling into that this year.
There's a lot of evidence now. I mean, you show it well in the news release, holes 2412, 2308, and now 2517. All those holes bottomed in increasing grade. And what's funny is, like, 2308 was not a great hole, but the bottom of that hole, the copper is picking up again. And it's all in proximity to this new MT anomaly that we're calling the footwall. And there's a lot of clues there, Chris, like around the Hercules Adit, Frog Pond area, even in the upper plate, that something's different. Like, something's different in that area.
Yeah. So are you seeing the screen here?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, this is the best sort of 2D screenshot we could take. I mean, obviously it helps if you can, properly spin it in 3D. But yeah, no, I mean, you look at how sharply in this whole 25/7, all of a sudden the grades spike back up here as it gets into this orange blob down here. Same thing with 2308, same thing with 2412. Could have kept going for a long time. By the way, 2408, why does it not spike up again here? Because that was still in that late intermineral porphyry by the time it ended. Had it gone back out into the volcanic wall rocks, it would have shot back up too. But yeah, it's an interesting one for sure.
So does that mean we're gonna drill another hole that's going to go more than 1,000 meters into that MT anomaly early in 2026?
We're going to start in the frog pond, right, which would be somewhere here, if you can see where my cursor is.
Yeah.
We're gonna drill through the silver, and then we're gonna basically come all the way down and get, yeah, basically kind of similar to what 2412 did, but keep it going and try and drill the deepest hole we've ever drilled. So no limit. We're gonna just try and push the drill as far as we possibly can, which is not something we've ever done before.
Interesting. So no limit. How far can these drill rigs go? Like 1,500 meters?
Yeah, yeah, they should be able to do 1,500 meters. Dorado's best drill, the Val d'Or, is coming back this year. Their second best drill, the Tactex, is being souped up over the winter to basically be identical to this Val d'Or. So the big guns, the two big guns will be there, and we're looking at, you know, potentially bringing in a second company, which I won't name yet, but they're one of the absolute best in the business, and they've drilled the deepest hole ever in the country of Mexico. So they actually hold the record for the deepest core hole ever drilled in all of Mexico, and they're pretty keen to come work here. So I think we'll get a deal done with them, and I think we'll get them in here, and maybe they'll be the ones to drill this hole. We'll see.
I like that. I like the sound of that. Drill contractor that has a good track record that wants to work in Idaho. That's good to hear.
Yeah, I mean, by the way, they're specialized in drilling the most challenging ground on the planet too. So yeah, it very much makes sense to bring them into Hercules.
If you can drill at Hercules, you can drill anywhere.
Yeah, people used to say, the drillers used to show up here. They said, "Well, we've drilled in Nevada. If you can drill in Nevada, you can drill anywhere." And like 2 weeks in, they'd be crying and be sending them to mental asylums. Like, it's tough. It is much more challenging than anywhere in Nevada. It is just, yeah. I mean, it's a gift and a curse, right? There's a lot of faulting that happened here that broke up the ground. But if that faulting wasn't there, we wouldn't have the multiple overlapping. There's 3 overlapping mineralizing events. You have the porphyry, you have the hypogene enrichment, and then you have the silver-lead-zinc. So a lot has happened here.
A lot has happened there. So a couple of interviews ago, I quoted you saying that the MT is the truth. Is the MT still the truth, Chris? And looking at the new data you have, the more detailed data, what is it telling you?
Well, I don't know. I mean, it's kind of a bullshit thing to say, but yeah, I mean, I think it is. You know, I think at the time we'd only had the phase 1 survey done, and so let me just sort of explain the sort of methodology to the madness here. So initially we wanted to cover like a really, really broad area, right? And so the Hercules property, true, not Olympus and everything else, it's about 30,000 acres. And so we sort of teamed up with Scout, and we did this big joint survey, but because it was such a massive, massive area that we had to cover, we wanted to do it at 1 kilometer station spacing, because we've been doing IP, right, up until that point, which is sort of the tried, tested, and true geophysical method for porphyry systems. The problem with IP here is because these porphyries are concealed, right? And we have cover rock sitting on top of them. And that unfortunately adds a lot of noise, right? Because there's sort of a limit, a depth of investigation for IP surveys. And if half of that is cover that's younger than your porphyry system, you're going to get a lot of noise. And if that cover is really conductive, that's going to make it even more challenging, because what you're trying to do with IP is you're injecting actual active current into the ground. So you're bringing generators out and transmitters. You're actually sending current into the ground on these 2 electrodes called dipoles, and that current has to travel through the earth in an arc from one electrode to the other. Now the problem is, if the cover rock is really conductive, which it is here at Hercules, it won't travel deep down into the porphyry and get a measurement from the porphyry. It'll just follow the path of least resistance, and it'll go through that conductive cover rock, and you won't really get much data from, you know, the deeper target that you're looking for. And so why did we switch to MT this year? Well, MT, you don't use an active source current. You don't need to bring in your own generator and transmitter. You're using the Earth's natural electrical currents, you know, which occur from all kinds of crazy things like solar activity, lightning strikes, you know, just currents that are, you know, flowing many kilometers down. And so with MT, you're essentially measuring those at different frequencies, and you can effectively survey a depth of investigation of up to 6 kilometers, right? And they're really, MT is sort of meant for big systems, right? Because it's not a high resolution method. It's low resolution, you know, for sort of big systems. And so we did that first pass. We did it at a kilometer spacing, which is a very coarse spacing, right? We wanted to cover 30,000 acres. Now, what did we get back from that phase 1 survey? Well, it was interesting, right? Because we were a little skeptical. Is it going to work? Is it not going to work? We had about a kilometer of strike length already defined. We had a geological model. And so we knew what Leviathan looked like. We knew what the known mineralization looked like. And thankfully, when we got the results back of that phase 1 survey, we saw that the anomaly was lined up basically perfectly with the known mineralization. In fact, it was dipping southeast, just like the known mineralization. And what was really interesting was that it not only, you know, did it line up with the known mineralization, but it continued for another 5 kilometers to the south, right? So this was the anomaly that we've been so excited about. We call the truth. Now, we wanted to get better resolution on that. And so what we did is we basically said, okay, well, let's come back and let's infill that really coarse spacing, and let's infill it at 250 meter spacing in both directions and get a much higher data density. But of course, you're only going to do it over the anomaly. And so what you're basically doing is you're surveying the anomaly now. And so now we can see if this giant anomaly, which is 5-6 kilometers long and, you know, 3 kilometers wide, we can now see within that where specifically, you know, we want to be focusing our drilling. And so what you're seeing is the results of that. So what's come out, and by the way, we've done a lot of processing, because we actually had a lot of starting data to begin with. We had a geological model, right? So what you're seeing here is what's called an inversion. So you collect all this data at surface, and then you get an algorithm to essentially predict what type of subsurface conductivity or resistivity would cause the results that you measured on surface. But the problem is there's an infinite number of possible solutions with these geophysical inversions, right? There could be so many different ways to form the same data that you measured at surface. But if you already have a geological model, and for example, we've got the Jurassic cover, we've got it modeled, right? And it's a sort of thickening wedge. And so we know exactly what that looks like. And we've measured the resistivity, because in our core shaft, we have an instrument where we can cut 10 centimeter pieces of core every 50 meters down the hole, put it in this instrument, and it will tell us, hey, that's 1,000 ohm meters, right? So of all the pieces of rhyolite that we've measured, we know that rhyolite is 1,000 ohm meters. And so we've got a 3D model of the rhyolite, and we can tell the inversion, hey, before you get started, don't just try and guess based on nothing. We know some of the information already. We know that the rhyolite is this, we know the conglomerate is this, we know the andesite is this. And so we give it all this starting information, and so all it now has to do is solve for the areas that we haven't drilled. So it's sort of like, you have a formula, it's like, 5 plus y equals 10. Well, y, it's easy to solve for that. Y is obviously 5, but if it was just like x plus y plus z equals 10, there's a lot of different combinations of x, y, and z to get 10. So the more you sort of narrow it down, the more accurate the result of that last remaining variable is going to be. And so we took another couple months, and we worked with Ben Murphy at Marga to do this constrained inversion right? So this is the ultimate final answer now of surveying anomalies within anomaly and then running constrained inversions based on all this starting information. And so what we're seeing, which is really, really interesting, are these cylindrical anomalies that run really deep. I mean, you can see the scale on here. That's 1 kilometer. So that there are these big, giant cylindrical anomalies. Maybe they're nothing. Maybe they're 5 other porphyry centers. Only drilling will tell. But they certainly look quite compelling from a geological perspective.
They look very compelling. And that picture, that painting could be hung in the Louvre in my book. It's a beauty. And you know what's amazing though, Chris? Like what really stands out to me about this is these anomalies haven't really been drilled yet. They're deep, or they're located in areas of the property where you haven't been focused the last few years, because the discovery hole was 2305 up by Frog Pond. And so 99% of the drilling has been up in that area, the old area, the Belmont, Grade Creek, Frog Pond, Herc added, et cetera, and only in 2025 did you start to venture down into southern. Well, I guess 2416 was the first foray into Southern Flats, but it didn't get into the Triassic. And what really stands out about this news release is I love the plan map. Oh man, the plan map is really good. Figure 3, showing 2416 drill trace, showing where 2525 is right now. And now there's a new MT conductivity anomaly that's like off the charts. I mean, this is like an anomaly we haven't seen before. And it says 300 meters above sea level. So that tells me it's about 1,000 meters deep is basically what you're showing from the surface there where the drill rigs are. And hole 2416 didn't get deep enough to get into it. So how excited are you for hole 2525?
Ore bodies are, we say like a needle in a haystack, right? So you think about this. I mentioned this earlier, 1965, the first hole was drilled at Hercules. And for the next 20 years, till about 1984, there was 308 holes drilled here. Well, guess what? Not one of those ever had, they had no idea that there was a giant porphyry copper system here, right? So it's not easy, right? It's not easy. And you only, quite often, you only find what you're looking for, right? And if you're only testing the model, which these guys were, their model was that this was a shallow silver-lead-zinc system, right? So there's no need to drill deep, right? So if you only test the model, you're only going to find the model. The difference today is obviously we have technology like, I just explained, like this MT, which can start to help us find these needles in the giant haystack. I mean, just imagine how many more of these porphyry systems are probably out there, right? Like if you think about it, that discovery hole here, 2305, is probably a bit of an accident. I mean, we had a geophysical anomaly then. We had the IP, right, which basically just nicked the top of this thing, and thank God we found it. But they didn't have that technology back then, right? Their IP didn't go as deep as it does today. But what are the odds that first deep hole ever drilled found the only porphyry center under cover? This whole district is covered. We've got a 73-kilometer belt under our control now with Olympus, and the entire belt is covered. But we have these little windows that are cropping out here and there that show porphyry alteration, right? They're not porphyry centers, they're not high-grade potassic centers, but they're porphyry alterations. So we know there's porphyries everywhere out here, but the challenge is how do you find them when there really are? I mean, they're not small, but they're, on a 73-kilometer scale, they're small, right? They are needles in haystacks, and it's I think the technology like this that we're now using is going to help start to find these other centers that are obviously out there. I mean, almost no doubt about it, they're out there. It's just a matter of, are we going to find them or not? 25 is interesting. So that's this hole right here. We paused it. We were drilling right up until December, I think 18th or something like that, or maybe the 20th. But unfortunately, drillers like to go home for Christmas too. So we had to pause it. That hole had just made it through the unconformity. So we just made it through the target. I'd driven down. I wanted to go see it. I'm all excited. And I get down and, there was a small hiccup. It was like, oh, we got to do this. And it's going to take another day or so to get this, the hole reconditioned and stabilized and drilling again. They said, well, we got to go, right? Like it's Christmas. So cliffhanger for me, especially when you then come back and see that there's probably the best MT anomaly, which is this one here, this Southern Flats thing. And 25 was, we didn't plan 25. We didn't have this information. We didn't have this inversion. We didn't have the phase 2 data when we planned 25. It's just sort of a coincidence that we get the second inversion back, and 25 is going right into the guts of this thing. So yeah, we're obviously excited to get that hole up and running again here, hopefully soon. Still a few things that, we got to get our house in order before we launch our 2026 drill program again. There's no snow on the ground now, so believe me, I want to get this going as quickly as possible because we could be drilling right now. But yeah, we all want to get hole 25 going and hopefully see if it's the next Porphyry center. It might not be, but there's 5 new targets now, right? They're probably not going to be 5 Porphyry centers, but even just one, if even just one of these is a new Porphyry center similar in size to Leviathan, that's absolutely massive, right? If you think about the scale of how much that's going to add, how much more copper that's now going to add if just one of these are another Porphyry center.
So hold on, let's go through the timeline a little bit, because I think that's an interesting story. So you finished drilling hole 25, 23 all the way down there to the southeast. You said, hold on, we're moving away from where we want to be. So you decided to go back close to hole 2416, which obviously you drilled hole 2416 for a very good reason when you did. It just didn't reach the target. So you go back to that area, drilling hole 25, 25. I imagine based upon very similar, rationale for why you drilled 2416. And then you're excited enough by whatever's happening in the drill hole that you drive down to Idaho. The hole's getting into the Triassic, and then they call it because they have to go home for Christmas. And then at some point in the last few weeks, you see this anomaly based upon the updated MT data, and you're like, hold on, we're drilling right into it. Is that the order of events?
That is the order of events. Yeah, I wouldn't read too much into me driving down. I mean, geologists get excited about a lot of things, but let me tell you, geologists get disappointed about a lot more things than they get excited for. The only thing that's certain about this business is you will be disappointed, right? But let's see. It certainly has a chance. We'll just say that it certainly has a chance. But we got to get this drilling going again. It was in the leach cap, right? So what does that mean? Leach cap is the very top of the porphyry system. At one stage, even though it's covered now, at one stage it was at surface. And when it was at surface 200 million years ago, it was exposed to oxygen, and the metals and the sulfide minerals were being oxidized to iron oxide, to rust, right? And then the Jurassic happened, and that all got covered up by younger volcanics, which is where it's sitting now today. And so now we drill through those younger volcanics. When we first get to the top of the target, we're in what we call the leach cap, which is where all the metals have rusted away to iron oxide. And so that's all I was able to see. was iron oxide and some interesting alterations. So that could either mean, you know, this is another 2305, which was, by the way, when we first drilled 2305, the discovery hole, I mean, keep in mind, this is 2023, this is a silver project, silver-lead-zinc hosted in a very specific unit, one rock unit, the only rock unit that mineralization had ever been found in for 20 years, more like 100 years, going back to the 1800s of exploration, right? So, you know, the dogma was like, you only drill the Hercules Rhyolite here. But we wanted to see what this geophysical anomaly was, and so we kept that hole going, and we went through this andesite below that, which is relatively barren, and then we broke through the unconformity. We didn't know it was an unconformity at the time. It was just this weird red layer. What the hell is this red layer? And then as we got through that red layer, we were in the leach cap, but we didn't know it was a leach cap. We didn't even know there was a porphyry there, right? So we're just in this weird, I mean, we called it the silica hematite zone, right? Because that's the only way we could describe it at the time. We didn't know what it was. And it's just all these quartz veins and hematite iron oxide everywhere. But we had an XRF gun and there was no grade in it. And it took, you know, several shifts of drilling. I mean, I think we were even contemplating shutting it down at one point, right? Because we're like, this is really interesting. There's veins and there's alteration and it's very silicified, but there was nothing, you know, there was no metal content on the XRF. Thank God we didn't shut it down, because eventually, I think the following shift, it was in 2% copper once you got through the oxidation and leaching. So the point of that story being, yeah, this other hole, 25, is obviously in a leach cap, but until you get through that leach cap, you just have no idea. You know, is it going to be high grade, medium grade, or no grade? Time will tell.
So you're leaving us on another cliffhanger, because you're saying that if we follow the trend, what's next after the leach cap is the enrichment zone. Knock on wood, fingers crossed. You know, I got to ask you, because I know some people are going to point out the depth here, right? So like hole 2525 is like, I don't know, you're at like 900 meters or something, and it says
it's not an open pit target. Although maybe with the silver, who knows? I mean, there's a lot of rhyolite. There's like 600 meters of rhyolite in that hole. It's crazy.
What's the bar? You know, what's the bar for 1,000-meter deep target? Like,
high.
Yeah, what does the grade have to be?
High. Like if we're talking about block cave, right, at 1,000 meters down, you know, I think we're going to want to see like 1% copper, 1% copper. Like, it's got to be high. Don't get me wrong. Like, we are drilling for, this is a high grade target that we're going at. We're not going for 0.3 copper at 1,000 meters deep. You know, like the only caveat to that might be the fact that there is a lot of silver in Southern Flats. So consider this. Everywhere else we've drilled, right, above Leviathan, you know, the rhyolite is only so thick, right? So you can only get so much scale. When you step across what we call Camp Creek and you get into Southern Flats, all of a sudden the rhyolite is like, you know, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of meters thick, which means the cover is very, very thick. But that cover is almost entirely rhyolite, right? So there's conglomerate, you know, we get a little bit of conglomerate and andesite of the sort of two other units that we get in the cover. We don't like those. We like the rhyolite because the rhyolite has the silver. Well, the proportion of rhyolite to everything else is much, much higher in Southern Flats. And I think there's a silver discovery brewing in Southern Flats. It hasn't happened yet, but the smoke is absolutely.
Hole 2506 was a nice start.
You could call it a discovery hole, but I don't know, right? Like, I think that's still smoke of what's to come. I don't think just this random hole that we just decided to drill down, you know, is the prize. But it's everywhere, right? Like, it's there, it's somewhere. There's a corridor, right? It's kind of around that 2416. It's kind of around that 2506, and probably this 2525. We'll see. I mean, until you get the assays, you just don't know. We could be disappointed, but I think there's going to be a lot of silver in the cover in Southern Flats. Like, well, we got to drill a lot more holes, but I think it's there.
Okay, very good. A few more questions while I have you. I mean, I could ask you questions until 9 o'clock tonight, Chris, but let's keep it as concise as we possibly can here. What's going on at Pegasus? So this is something that was mentioned at the end of last year. I think you dropped a couple of hints, and now we see it here in the long section. I mean, to my brain, to my novice brain, this looks like it could be a cluster of porphyries all coming up from down deep that have all been tilted the same way. Am I crazy, or what's going on here?
No, that's what my novice brain is seeing too. But again, you know, you gotta drill them right before you come on promoting that you got what looks to be what is consistent with the anomaly that you would expect for several other porphyry centers, right? Because porphyries are typically cylinders, right? They're magmatic intrusions that are cylindrical shaped. You know, the other kind of funny thing, like we know that that any porphyries in this belt have been tilted, right? So like if you're drilling in South America, in Argentina or Chile or Peru, your porphyries are going to be vertical, right? Just vertical upright cylinders. But tectonics have tilted things over here. These are old girls. They've lived hard lives and they've been sort of pushed over. So now they're kind of leaning about 45 degrees to the north, like they're tilted to the north. Well, you know, it's just kind of interesting that these cylinder-shaped anomalies are also tilted to the north. But yeah, look, I think it's going to be, I mean, give us, you know, 10 holes right into these things. Quite often, you know, maybe the first hole doesn't hit. You know, you're seeing alteration everywhere. So I mean, there's definitely more porphyries out here. I mean, I think we're almost certainly convinced of that. It's just a matter of how many drill holes before we find it or tag into the next porphyry center. But I mean, the writing is on the wall, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm at an 11 here, Chris. I don't know if I can contain myself. How many more weeks before 25-25 gets underway? You got to tell us. Is it like, are we looking at like 2 or 3 weeks? Are we looking at like 3 or 4 weeks, you think?
Probably closer to the 4-week mark. Yeah. Yeah, you know, unfortunately we lost you know, one of our key geos just recently. He's not dead, don't worry, but he doesn't want to do the 3 weeks field rotation. You know, he's in a serious relationship now, so we got one geo that we got to replace, right? So I'm just being open, transparent, right? Like why we're not starting again right away. You know, because basically we have 2 project geos that sort of cross shift each other, right? That's kind of how it works. You know, one guy can't be there 24/7 all the time, so you know, that's one of the things we're trying to replace. Obviously, assays have been brutal timing this year. You may have noticed we're now sending them to Nevada. And MSA has set up a prep facility in Elko now, which is great. It's like, I think 3x faster already. But you know, it'd be nice to get the rest of the assays in and update the model and stuff too. But no, trust me, it's killing me. I mean, it's a cliffhanger for me, and there's no snow there. Trust me, I want to get going as soon as possible.
All right. If there are any good geos who want to work in Idaho, send your resume into Chris after this interview.
Yeah,
I mean,
project managers. You don't even need to be a geologist. You just need to be able to yell at drillers and keep things.
oh, I can do that. Hold on, maybe.
Hey,
So
we'll take it. We'll take you, man.
So as soon as we get back underway, okay, let's just say hypothetically March 1st. I just made up that date. Holes 25-18 resume 25-25, obviously, and then we have the RC pre-caller already done for, is it 25-21? So that hole will also, right?
It was an interesting one, actually. We didn't even talk about that, but like something weird going on there. I think I've stopped labeling them because it just gets too noisy. So this is 21. This is a pre-caller, so I think, you know, that hole is probably somewhere here. Would have made it to the target. Now it needs to drill it with core. 18 is this one here, and it just didn't seem to quit. I mean, this is a really long hole, and I mean, the mineralization should be done. I mean, you can see where the hole trace is. It's way out here. Mineralization should be done. You know, we should be outside of the system, but strangely picked up again. So again, there's something brewing with these, like, you know, we're starting up again at depth that I think we're gonna maybe start to figure out this year if there's something more to the picture at depth, maybe than meets the eye here. But yeah, that's another one interesting that I'm kind of excited to get going again too.
So once holes 21 and 18 and 25 are completed, what are you thinking is the next set of priority targets? Are you going to focus on this big anomaly at Southern Flats, or are we going to do more inspection of this footwall MT anomaly first?
What do you want to see?
I want to see both.
Pick one.
Let me see the core for 25-25 first.
Okay. All right. Well, you know what's funny? Like, that's what we say too. Like, until we see what happens with 25-25, like, it's very hard to make a decision because, you know, it's a 1 or a 0, right? If it's a 0, then we're going somewhere else. If it's a 1, then we're going to be doing a lot more drilling right there. So, you know, we kind of need these answers too, to really decide which of these 5 targets we want to go after next, or do we want to just stay on this giant Southern Flats thing?
Yeah, I mean, at this point, all other things being equal, I mean, I would love to see this expand to 4 or 5 rigs again and have a couple in the footwall area testing both the deeper and then the shallower, both the silver and the copper. And then I would like to see a couple of rigs at Southern Flats. And, you know, you mentioned the possibility of taking, you know, like an RC rig and just focusing on the shallow silver. I think that's a great idea too.
Yep, definitely. Well, we had a board meeting this morning, which I initially suggested. I mean, we've got a really long exploration season here. Like, we could have gone basically year-round this year. But, you know, what our VPX Dylan proposed initially was that we go for a 10-month season this year, with 3 drill rigs operating at basically 25 to 30 meters per day. I mean, it's slow, but that, believe it or not, is much better than it's been in the past, which would get us somewhere in the neighborhood of, you know, 22,500 to 27,000 meters, depending on, you know, whether we're close to the lower or the higher end of that range. But then the conversation, you know, quickly moved to, well, what about 4 rigs? No, we've got about $10 million left in the bank going into this season. So obviously, regardless, there will be a raise at some point in the season. But yeah, I mean, obviously, we've got a hot market, we've got a hot copper market, we've got a hot silver market. You know, we want to do, you know, 4 rigs, right? That was kind of where the board call ended up. Like, why are we doing 3 rigs when we, you know, we could be doing 4? You know, and what kind of money do we want to maybe look to raise? When do we want to look to raise it? We don't have the answers to those questions yet. We're gonna, you know, we need more answers from the drilling first. Like, we need to finish hole 25, right? And some of these other things before we make any of those decisions. But I think at some point this year, we're going to look to do a very big raise, and, you know, potentially step up to that 4 rig level. Probably is what's going to happen.
Go big or go home. I mean, I think the foundation has been laid since 2023. It's a solid foundation there in Idaho. There's no time like the present, both in life and in terms of hard rock mining and critical minerals in the United States in 2026. I want to see you go all out, all guns blazing this year. Of course, as intelligently as we possibly can. We don't want to waste money. We don't want to do stupid stuff. We want to be efficient and effective. But man, I as a shareholder and, you know, as a supporter of the company, I want to see, go for it. Like, go for it big this year. Look, I'll give you the last word, Chris. Give us a rough timeline and set some expectations for what investors can expect from the company over the coming months. And maybe just tell us what your biggest challenges and opportunities are ahead.
Yeah, so if we were to sort of summarize what we just discussed on this call, right away, we're trying to get this order of magnitude study going. That's going to drive, what remaining gaps are left to be filled before we can actually begin work on an actual MRE. So that's going to be happening in sort of maybe Q2. I would presume we'll have that information, we'll have that internal resource estimate, and then either we look to do fill a few gaps and start the MRE at some point this year. And that'll at least backstop how big this is already. But then it's exploration from there, and like we just said, I think we want to start soon. We can, there's no snow, so we can start now. We've got the money to start now. It's just a matter of sort of just getting a few last little technical things in place. Maybe we can talk about your position. Your new position is project manager. We'll get you maybe a nice little house in Cambridge. You might want to buy real estate in Cambridge too, right? Because it's going to be a big mine, so you're going to have thousands of workers here. So we'll get you a nice place in Cambridge, and hopefully we can start soon. Look, it's what, February 4th today. If we can get started here in early March, I think that'd be great, right? And we're going to start with 2 rigs. So Dorado, our tried, tested, and true Canadian drillers that just absolutely crushed it for us are going to be coming back. Starting 25, right? We have 2 holes that were paused, hole 25 and hole 18, both ending in stuff that we want to keep going. So we'll get those holes going again. We don't have a drill plan yet for 2026. We just got these results literally at Roundup, right, at the conference last week. So this is brand new. Dylan, our VP, is planning a program now, like all the drill holes to test all these new anomalies. We're going to be testing Seven Flats. We're going to be testing Pegasus. We're testing the footwall anomaly, which is, by the way, what we call that new anomaly that 17 ended in. And by the way, it's entirely in the footwall, which is the big, thick body of mineralization that sits sort of in the footwall side of the late intermineral porphyry, which is the porphyries that we've been drilling at Hercules has always been lower grade, and that's always been the big question. Like, why is the porphyry so low grade? That doesn't make sense. Where's if the host rock and everything else is like 0.6 and higher, then where's the porphyry that brought that in, right? Maybe the footwall empty anomaly is going to lead us to that. So we're going to get some holes down there, get that deep one, starting in the frog pond. We got this hook thing. We haven't talked about that, but don't worry about it. It's just another thing we're going to be testing. Yeah, it's going to be a big program, and obviously we want to start as quickly as possible. So we'll keep the market updated here as we get closer and closer, but lots going on.
A fantastic update, Chris. The biggest year yet in the history of Hercules Metals. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.